What's up, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com, or if you're watching on our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me, as he always does, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And Andrew, we're here for another episode of our UNC Basketball ISO Series. Already done a few already, so if you haven't seen those after this video is done, click the link to our channel below, and you will find those linked on there. We're going to be focusing on Armando Bacot in this episode, as you can tell by the title. But before we do that, make sure you guys head on over to TarHeelIllustrated.com, which you can see right above there written out in big letters. You can also find a link in our description below and sign up for our premium message boards for just $8.33 a month. The recruiting dead period is officially over. So there's a ton of recruiting stuff, not only with basketball, on the football side as well. That is going on right now. Dina King's been all over the place with football camps and other stuff that she's been doing. David Sissy been all over the place with, going to basketball tournaments and high school prospects and interviewing them and talking to them. So if you want to read that stuff and see that stuff, you got to be signed up as a premium member. Most of our recruiting stuff goes on the boards only, and we have premium articles that you can only access if you're signed up as well. So if you're interested in what's going on kind of behind the scenes with football and basketball recruiting at North Carolina, head on over to our website and sign up for just $8.33 a month, AJ. But enough of my shameless plug, or our shameless plug, I should say. Let's dive into our
pay the bills, man.
You got to do what you got to do, man. You got to do what you got to do.
Float.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, we're not going to spend too much more time on this, but if you're a diehard Carolina fan, especially, and you really like what goes on recruiting, you find that stuff fascinating, got to be a part of our community, because that's just a huge majority of what we do, particularly in the offseason. And we go where the Tar Heels go, as you've heard AJ say many a time. So great time to get involved in the offseason ahead of the start of football and basketball here for the next few months. But AJ, let's dive into Armando Bacot. I'm going to run through some stats on him, then I'll kick it to you. 29 games last year as a sophomore, 22.7 minutes, 12.3 points per game, 7.8 rebounds, 0.8 assists, and shot 62.8% from the floor. And as a comparison, only shot 46.9% as a freshman. So a big jump in his shooting percentage as a sophomore last year. AJ, now I'm just going to start it off with I'm not going to go into my thoughts on Armando. I've said it a lot during the season. Thought he was the most improved player for me. I thought he was Carolina's best player for a large majority of the season. But would you kind of agree with that from what we saw last season of Armando, that overall probably Carolina's most consistent player? And I don't even think it's up for debate. Definitely Carolina's most improved player as well.
No doubt. And the shooting percentage that you just mentioned, all you have to do is understand the footwork down the paint. Mm-hmm. and his movement, economizing movement. Look at Armando's post moves, the herky-jerky, the go left, go right, give the defender a chance to establish roots right there. Mm-hmm. and defend him and keep him from getting off uncontested shots. Last year, Armando had those moves. His footwork, the drop step, spin move, all that stuff was better and better and better. He was far more decisive because his footwork was better. His body movement was more efficient. And therefore, he had less contested stuff around the rim. He missed a lot of stuff around the rim as a freshman. Last year, he didn't miss nearly as much. He actually played a little bit less per game last year than as a freshman, and the numbers were a lot better. And he did it with having, I think, a lot more options around the paint. Now, obviously, Garrison had a really good year 2 years ago, but Garrison was getting that stuff kind of around the lane. It wasn't always just posting up, turning, and scoring. Last year, Armando was on the court a lot with Daron Sharp and Walker Kessler. They were lower block, catch, turn, and score kind of guys. So Armando had to share a lot of that with other guys. He's not going to have to share that this coming year. And it's not going to be a situation where you have to deal with a ton of double downs, because they're going to be spread out a lot. So he's going to have opportunities to get singular defenders on his hip. And if he makes the progress with post moves and footwork and efficiency between sophomore year and junior that he made from his freshman year to his sophomore year, he's going to be an outstanding player in the post next year. And he's going to take his game away from the post. We saw it late in the year. I know we'll get into that here in a second. We saw it late in the year, but he's not just going to be back to the basket, catch the ball, get guy in hip, turn and score with either hand. There's going to be a lot more to his game. But if he's awesome at that, it's going to allow the other stuff to really take hold. I think we have a chance at seeing a very, very good player, a first-team All-ACC potential kind of player in Armando, a guy that can rack up double-doubles. He had 10 or more rebounds in 10 games last year. Mm-hmm. And that's playing 22 and a half minutes a game. Mm-hmm. Put him on the court for 30. He had a ton of games at 7, 8, 9 rebounds. I'm telling you right now, if he averages 30 minutes a game, he's going to have at minimum 20 games with 10 or more rebounds. I think he's going to be outstanding. Yeah. And I think his head is in the right place. And that maturity stuff that he had to deal with as a freshman, the voices in his head that he used to talk about, he's worked through all that stuff. He's still in college. He understands the mission, the personal mission and the broader mission now. I think we're going to see a different player, and I think we're going to see a little bit of a different dude. He's still going to be funny, still going to say some crazy stuff in the interviews, may let out a cuss word every once in a while. That's him. That's who he is. That's okay. But I think there's going to be more of a man doing those things than a guy trying to work his way into manhood, which I think we've seen the last couple of years. We saw some of that transition this past year.
Agreed. I want to go back to the 2020 ACC tournament. One of the few times, I guess the last game we covered where it was somewhat normal, right before the kind of the pandemic, Carolina lost to Syracuse. Yeah. And I'll never forget, you'll remember this, I was standing right beside you, but the media, the interview area, I'm not going to say room, the interview lane almost, you had the kind of the ACC backdrop and the players were kind of standing behind a rope and
that was, just to clarify, that's when the COVID stuff started hitting.
Yep.
So they had the media separated the players with a rope.
Yeah.
So we weren't allowed to be right next to them. We were a couple feet away from them. We were
It was still not quite back to normal. It seems like forever ago. But, yeah, that was literally – I remember driving back the next day as a caveat, and I think that's when everything shut down. So it was right around that time, right before that. And, we're interviewing Armando, and I don't remember exactly what he said. You can watch the interview if you look up Armando Bacot Syracuse interview. You'll find it on our channel somewhere. But I just remember saying something along the lines of how much he was looking to improve going into the following season, that he needed to be better. That he was gonna improve and all that kind of stuff. And we saw that last year from him. And the reason I bring that up is because we talked a lot about maturity, and you've already mentioned it with Armando. I think that was the biggest thing really for him that he needed to work on. Put all his game stuff aside and performances on the court, all that stuff out of the way. I think maturing off the court and on the court was the big step that Armando had to take. Now, I think we saw a lot of that last year with him, and just not only what we saw from him on the court showed that, but what we saw from him during interviews. And that's kind of what I ask you about is there was a couple of times last year that, and we obviously didn't turn to you because a lot of times we were, if it was an away game, we were doing it over Zoom and whatnot. But I remember talking to you a few times and being like, man, like Armando's kind of like a leader on this team. He's only a sophomore, but he's kind of, he's saying the right things. I remember when you mentioned him cussing in one interview, which I loved, where he's like, this ish isn't going to happen again. Is basically what he come out and said. We're not having that anymore compared to what happened last year. And I love that quote. And we saw glimpses of that from Armando all year, of saying the right things, being kind of a spokesperson of the team, coming out and talking, giving good answers and win or lose, giving good interviews. And I think that's what I'm interested to see the most is, now he's a junior. He's one of the few veterans on this team that's done it and played for this university for a few years now. And I think I think there's no reason to doubt that he could be a really good leader for this team. And not only from what he's going to do on the court and what we think he's going to do on the court production wise, but just from what we kind of saw last year and what he also brings from a media standpoint. And I'm sure in that locker room as well. It just seems like a guy that, can really be a big figurehead and a big leader on this team next season.
Well, that started to surface over the course of the year, in part because the other older guys weren't getting it done. In order to lead, you've got to produce to lead. Mm-hmm. And you can't underproduce from what you had before. I think that hurt Garrison. Garrison was working through some of his own issues because his season didn't go as planned. I don't think, Leakey's not a very vocal guy. I don't think there's a lot of natural vocal leadership skills with him. I think he's more of a lead by example guy. Mm-hmm. And Andrew just never – I think Andrew had leadership skills as a human being, but he didn't produce enough as a player. Yeah. So it had to fall on somebody. So the guy who had the up and down freshman year, in which maturity was point number one, during the course of the year started feeling himself out, everything was growing simultaneously. We saw his game change during the year. And I think because each night he went out, he was often the best player on the team, the most productive player, the most efficient player on the team. And I think he just started feeling that. So that came out more. I think that will absolutely be the case this coming year. I think we're going to see Caleb Love be a lot more vocal as well. And I think that Brady Manick will add some of that. That's, he's in Chapel Hill now. It won't be long for him to establish some of those traits because he can get the job done. Armando will get the job done. He can speak loudly in a locker room when he's posting double-doubles, when he's having a first-team All-ACC kind of year, when he's the number one go-to option, when you run everything through him. That's a great position to be in that gives you the platform to be that guy, and I think he has the attributes to be that guy. He sometimes comes off as a little bit, silly, if you will, and I don't mean that in a bad way. He likes to joke. He likes to have fun. Guy, yeah. So it'll be incumbent upon, and that's not a criticism at all. I think that that's actually a pretty healthy thing. But in order to be a leader, you have to find your balance when it's okay to be silly and when it's okay to smack someone in the fanny and be serious. And that will be one of his great challenges. And a lot of that stuff is going to be achieved here in June and this month and in July and in August and in September and all that kind of stuff. That's when his leadership role will really come into fruition. And they need that. They're going to need a homegrown Carolina guy. When I say homegrown, been there for 4 years. It can't just be Manick. It's going to have to be somebody else in order for this team to work itself through some tough situations. Most of these kids have not been in true road games in the ACC with crowds. Manick was in the Big 12, and there's some great environments there, but he hasn't been in the ACC. Armando has, okay? Leakey has. That's it. That's pretty much it. So he's going to have to put this team on his shoulders and say, guys, I'm going to carry you through this very, very difficult period right now. I think he's going to have the ability to do that from a performance standpoint and from a leadership standpoint.
Yeah. Now, last question I want to ask you, last thing I want to talk about. Armando's been a guy that's stepped into the NBA waters this year to get a little feedback. I mean, we've been saying this since day one. We had never had a reason to believe or thought he was leaving to actually go. But a very positive thing for him to do in terms of get feedback from scouts, get feedback from teams of things he needs to work on. So I say that my thing, I think, what I'd like to see Armando develop, and I'm sure NBA scouts are probably telling him too, is can he develop a little bit more of a consistent jump shot, maybe a little bit more of a consistent outside game? Doesn't mean to be a three-point shooter by any means. It'd be great if he could do that, especially when you look at the next level and how bigs kind of play in the NBA nowadays. But do you agree that that's probably maybe the next step for him is, he's been great around the basket last year. If he can develop a little bit of a jump shot, man, I mean, going to be really, really tough to defend.
Well, that's what he's been working on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He's been working on the 15-footer, the 18-footer, the three-pointer. And I'll tell you what, we saw some of this stuff come out in this game later as the year went on. In fact, if you go look at the Virginia Tech game, a stretch in the Florida State game, go look at the Wisconsin game, especially the first 8 minutes of the second half. Armando with the ball at the free throw line, defender coming up to defend him, gets in his defensive stance. Armando puts the ball on the floor, was able to get to the rim a few times. He's more athletic than some people might think he is when they just think strictly of his lower block moves and the fact he's very strong in his lower half of his body. Sometimes people think, those guys aren't very athletic. He is athletic. He could showed he could put the ball on the floor. He needs to do it more efficiently. He needs to be able to go left a little bit more when he does that. But hitting that jump shot's going to open that up for him. Guys are going to have to come out and guard him. I think we're going to see a lot more to his game. We're going to see a guy who is focused on becoming a pro, and that makes him a better college player. If he's just a dump it down in the block, turn and score guy, that's phenomenal if he's really efficient and gets that done on a regular basis. But if he can spread out and do more stuff and take his man away, we know that Caleb Love and R.J. Davis love to drive to the rim. Okay, one of the problems last year is there were always a couple of guys on the blocks. That means there were defenders on the blocks. If you're pulling stuff away, and if there's a lot more movement, a lot more space down the lane, Caleb's going to have more straight lines to the rim. RJ's going to have more straight lines to the rim. We'll see if more of that comes out of Kerwin's game. Brady Manick on the baseline. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of things that can be born out of Armando moving his game around a little bit more that makes them a better team and makes him more of an NBA prospect. I believe we will see all of that. I'm very, very high on the kind of season Armando Bacot can have as a junior. Very high on what he can do.
Best hairstyle on the team, too. Would you agree with that?
Well, I think it'll fluctuate. It's always different in the summer than the regular season. Remember, Roy kind of got on and said, "Look, I'll let you wear your hair like that, but you got to be able to do this, this, and this in the court."
That's Roy.
I think he would probably let him wear whatever hair he wants this year if he's going 20-10 every night.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. I think Manic might give him a run for his money with that Larry Bird impersonation because
Kobe White cut his hair.
I saw that.
That'll be some inspiration for him.
It was huge news. I mean,
who cares really?
Right.
To me, it's funny because you always know where he is.
Yeah, exactly.
You know where he is at all times. So maybe, cut your hair, you look more like everybody else. Defenders have a split second longer to pick you up on the other end of the floor.
Mm-hmm. I'm all for it. I always like the
guys. I'm all for guys doing what they got to do.
Exactly.
Cal Guy was wearing that man bun as a freshman. That was a terrible look. But that's what he wanted, and he was a pretty good player. So who cares?
Yeah, hey man, look good, play good. I'm a big proponent of that saying. I was back in the day when I played sports as well. Man, you had to look good out there. So if Armando Bacot feels good out there, he's gonna play better. So let him rock whatever hairstyle he wants. But yeah, no doubt about it. Best hairstyle on the team.
He will.
Yeah, he will. Armando, yeah, he's not shy about that. That's for sure. But good place to wrap this one up, AJ, before we get too deep down the hairstyle rabbit hole. We could go on for hours about it. But you know how that goes. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. As always, guys, make sure you go check out the other videos we've done with the UNC Basketball ISO Series. And make sure you head on over to our website and sign up to be a premium member for just $8.33 a month. Linked to that is in the description below. You guys know the drill. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel. See you in the next one. Thanks, guys.